Aloha everyone, my name is Alessandro and this is the Temple of Surf, the podcast. We'll give you full access to the best surfers, skaters, shapers, surfboard collectors, shop owners in the world. Discover with me their stories, the greatest successes, amazing behind the scenes, and much more. Aloha! Welcome to the fourth episode of our podcast. Today with us from Byron Bay Australia, legendary surfer Rusty Miller. I discuss with him about surf, his amazing stories, and much more. Hello Rusty, welcome to the show. Where are you today?
I'm in Byron Bay, New South Wales, Australia. So, as you probably know, a very famous place. Very famous, fortunately and unfortunately. Yes, and I am living near the town in Byron Bay. Yeah, next to some very good surfing places. But we're a bit crowded. We're overpopulated with surfers right now. But at least it's interesting. Yeah.
Everybody take the opportunity to go to surf nowadays. We never know if there's going to be lockdown, so I think people will go to surf and enjoy life. That's the most important.
Yeah,
right?
You cannot blame them. Yeah,
of course,
that's true.
Today we're going to talk about your career and your surf life and a lot of stories. But the first question that I have for you is, in your opinion, what is the most important thing in surfing?
I thought of that, and I thought of different things. So it's, like as you know, my surfing life. I'm first of all tell you what my vintage is. My vintage is 1943. So I'm so I am hopefully a wine that's doesn't have a loose cork. But my common denominator has been surfing through my life since I was 10. So I'm 77. So I've been surfing for that long time. But basically, I think one of the most important thing for me in surfing is to understanding nature, and in many ways. Of course, I think not all surfers are sort of super ecological and conscious of their footprint, but I think most surfers are pretty conscious of what kind of imprint they have in their daily life. Okay, so and to me, my how they say higher power or God of our own understanding is understanding nature, and I think something that's really I'm really glad I've spent a lot of time in nature.
Yeah, and nature gives you back as well, right?
Oh yes, it does. And it's like I always tell when I go out, I teach surfing here. I'm a surfing instructor. I do private surfing, one or two people. And we have 5 different schools, but 2 of them are just individual 1 or 2 people. And so I always tell people that, like surfing the waves, they don't know your name, you have to.
I like this definition. The waves do not know your name, so they treat everybody equally, right? And so.
Yeah, I wish they would. I wish I was special because they knew me for so long. It's okay.
Yeah, of course. You get a special treatment.
No exclusivity. Yeah.
Do you remember your first surfboard, like a proper one? I guess.
Yeah, I do actually, because I began surfing in 1953, and the area that I lived, basically, when I started surfing was just near Southern California. I'm a native of Southern California, about 20 miles north of San Diego. And so my first surfboard was actually, I bought an old plank, which was a balsa wood plank. In those days, they were just changing from, after the changing from redwood into, of course, using balsa and using fiberglass and balsa. So my board was a balsa and fiberglass, and I got an old plank and dragged it down. I was 10 years old. And then I had some county lifeguards in California were my sort of mentor, older people who were quite nice to me. And one of them said, "Oh, I'll shape you. You see that old 10-foot soggy board that I ripped this fiberglass off? He said, I'll shape it for you." So actually, my first board was shaped out of a 10-foot used balsa wood redwood stringer surfboard behind this lifeguard tower on the beach in some stand, and it was called a chip. It's a chip, sort of you first used on a big old Simmons board, which is way too big for me. So they actually shaped this old plank that I bought, and they shaped me a 710, what's called a chip. So yeah, I remember it very much. It was had three redwood stringers, and it was shaped with by hand by a draw plane and a Japanese draw plane and a Japanese buck plane, and then sanded. Yeah, and then I actually fiberglassed. I didn't have a lot of material. I fiberglassed the nose and the tail and the deck patch and the deck patch, and then the rest of it I varnished. I put about 12 coats of varnish in it. So it was balsa wood with pieces of fiberglass and nose and tail on a patch, and and varnished.
And what happened to that board? You still have it, or it just?
Oh, I wouldn't know. And then after that, of course, I got many different. I'm not a real good collector of surfboards. I just had them and rode them in.
Yeah, definitely. And that time, a lot of surfers were shaping their own boards, right?
There was local guys who were shapers. Yeah, and it was very early in those days. Obviously, there was only several. Anyhow, one of the first surfboard makers was Hobie, and then of course Dale Belzy. And Dale Belzy is the first years, 5 or 6 years after that. One of these lifeguards up the coast in Dana Point saw me surfing and took me over to Belzy surfboards, and that was my first actual sponsorship. And that was a very memorable board. The one that I got one of those.
Yeah, being sponsored by Welty was like a dream, right? It was
a big deal. Yeah, he was a really lovely, generous guy, and obviously the other I had. Someone had seen, this guy's doing all right. He's worth it. I mean, a lot of people were sort of sponsored in those days, for boards in those days, because the sport had started developing, and growing in like so early 60s, maybe. Yep,
definitely. So you had an amazing career, and if you had to pick one moment, the defining moment of your career, which one would you select?
Yeah, I was thinking that the time of me, I went to up and down California. The United States Surfing Association was one of the first competition sort of thing. Competition was very early; it just started, right? And some people thought, it really wasn't about judging surfing and stuff. A lot of people were sort of purists about surfing, and it's finally and I did years of competition up and down the coast. And I think one of the most funny moments when I became I became a United States surfing champion. It was after a series of competitions up and down the coast throughout the year, and I assembled the most points. So I was a United States surfing champion in 1965 for that year.
Wow.
So that was like, for me, that was a significant time to be that. Yeah.
Wow, fantastic. And so just for my curiosity, because I had in a previous episode a guest like Fred Emmings and Joy Cabell.
Yeah.
They both compete in Maha in 1967 International Surfing.
Yeah.
Were you there as well?
Yeah, I won the Maha competition a couple of times. I was in a really good club called the Wind and Sea Surf Club.
Oh wow! Yeah, legendary.
Yeah. Well, it started in La Jolla, California, and then they had this. One of the beginnings of it was they started these clubs started right. Yeah. And the Los Angeles tribe of surfers invited our area to come to the competition. So we formed a club called the Wind and Sea Surf Club, and basically what we did is we just basically hired a bus. The facilitator, guy named Thor Svensson, was a very, very good organizer. He was like a public a promoter of actors and singers and stuff like that. Anyhow, so he started this club called the Winning Sea Surf Club, and basically we got on a bus and we picked up all these, called these people up. So you want to be in the Winning Sea Surf Club? Sure, So we went from La Jolla all the way to Los Angeles, which is about 80 miles or something like that. And all along the coast, we picked up all these amazing surfers. LJ Richards, Joey Cabell. Joey was in Laguna. LJ Richards was in Oceanside. Mike Henson was from La Jolla. Mickey Munoz was from Dana Point. So he just picked up all these surfers. And we got to Malibu, and we and our Winning Sea Surf Club won the competition. and then it started, and then we had a sister. We also had a sister club for in Australia also. So a surf sister club. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, that is one of the most legendary club, the Wind and Sea, that really left a footprint that's like fantastic. Amazing. All the legendary surfers were there. And then later, Skip Fry and
Skip was was like a sidekick, also a good friend of Mike Henson. So he was and Butch Van Aertsdalen. He was he's from La Jolla too. Those guys were La Jolla guys. But and then also the other one of the other competitions, I was quite proud to be invited, because I got sponsored again by a local surfboard manufacturer called Hanson Surfboards, and we also got invited to. I went to Hawaii every year from '61. I think I went every Christmas. I'd go over to Hawaii and surfing big waves on Sunset another one of the members of the Winning Sea Surf Club was Pat Kern. And Pat Kern was Tommy Kern's dad, obviously. And he was a master craftsman, master shaper. And I actually wrote him a letter to, he was living out on the North Shore near Sunset Beach. And so I wrote him a letter, and he said, "Oh, come on over." So that was my first sort of place I actually stayed. So I was quite influenced by Pat Kern. And that was really, and then the first real competition, one of the first major competitions for big wave riding, of course, was called the Kahanamoku competition. I was invited to the first four, 1964 to 1968. I was invited to the Kahanamoku Invitational. 24 surfers invited around the world to go to Hawaii at that time, and I was in that.
It was a huge accomplishment, right? I think that meant that you were one of the few good ones, right?
I was recognized. Yeah, I was recognized by as I said, top 24 in the world.
Yeah.
So I was very most honored to be in that. And also the other thing is, Duke was alive at that time.
Oh.
Duke lived to every year, because Duke was not a very he was poor. He was not a well-heeled, wealthy person at all, because he was an amateur, right? He was a world swimming amateur, and you weren't allowed to be paid for that, right? So I think he was a service station's dad thing, and it swam all around. And this guy named Kimo McVeigh, a very lovely person, started recognizing how important Duke was. And Duke is like the ambassador international surfing. And he came here in 1915, for instance, and gave an exhibition. He wasn't the first surfer in Australia, but he sort of introduced the excitement of surfing into there, and he was quite a nice. And then I got to one of the competitions, 1967, I actually broke my leg. Taking a wave, and I broke my leg, and they took me to the hospital, and I had to put a cast, and it came back, and I was upset, of course, because I was in the semifinals. It was going pretty good, actually. And then but the good thing is, I was upset, but then there's a picture of me sitting with Duke. So I sat next to the Duke watching the competition and the finals and all that. So it was like having a picture with the Duke, the Duke and I sitting there was really cool, so it's thinking back on it was misfortune, but when you think back sometimes, and you got to be careful when you think about things, get too bummed out of things, because I'm very proud of having a picture next to the Duke.
Oh, of course.
That was his last year. He passed away in late 1968, I believe, early 69.
It's definitely one of a kind picture, that opportunity, right? It doesn't happen.
It was
not happening.
It wasn't. You didn't think it was an opportunity, but of course, thinking back on that, I was probably better, being associated, sitting with the Duke, than doing better in the competition. There you go. Be very careful about your misfortunes.
Definitely. Would you have done anything different, like all like these life of contest of surf? Would you have changed something that you said, like, oh, maybe I didn't?
I really can't answer that very well. Other than thinking, if I had a fortune teller told me who won the lotto number, or the big Melbourne Cup race, or international race, or something, that would have been good. But then again, not really. I really can't play with that kind of hypothetical situation.
No, definitely.
Just say, actually, however, it's interesting. That's an interesting question in that way, because even though I talked about misfortune and thinking that wasn't good, it was good. So maybe you shouldn't play around with your fate in that sense.
Definitely. But sometimes, when I ask the same question, for instance, to Tom Carroll, and Tom Carroll said, maybe I would have, instead of stop competing, I would have continued to compete, because I think I was very good. And so
he's a lovely guy, Tom. I know. I mean, it's what I love about surfing is such a good tribe, such a interesting thing, and some people who are more. Tom was super successful. The first $1 million sponsored surfer, and nice guy, and he is. He's one of those younger guys that some of the younger guys that they don't really care that much about history or something like that. And Tom Carroll's super respectful. I just love it. Just really turns me on when younger well-known surfers have talk to everybody, really respect to everyone. And Tom is like that, and some of the other ones, like Dave Rastovich, and particularly people like Tom and Rastovich, who's used their fame to help, to help the surfing community and to help people, and maybe be more conscious of economical environmental things that we can do, because of course right now we're in the world is in right now humankind. We're in a human a milestone of humanity with pandemic, with the plague, with the plague, and there has been plagues before, which I've just read about different plagues in the time of Dante and England and all the places how people dealt with that,
Yeah, no, definitely. And but today we are in a world that is a bit difficult to live. But if we think really, like you said, like at the Dante's time, where medicine was not as advanced of today, people were really dying. But yes,
interesting. In the Dante one, in the Dante thing, I just was reading something and noted that in theater they have masks, and they have a mask of a mask, black mask people wear. One's a smile, one's happy, one's sad, right? And those masks were they started during the plague in Dante's time. That was
I didn't know.
those two original masks were what medical people wore. Summer they wore a mask to go work with the people with plague. So
Interesting.
just read that the other day. Dante.
Yeah. There is a lot of, if you go on in that direction, like there is all the, also the Japanese theater with the kabuki theater. It's interesting, with all these mask, very clean, that just communicate one expression. I really like.
Oh.
We could talk for a full episode of the podcast about theater and expression, but today we're going to talk about surf. And actually, you said something that I really like when you were talking about Tom Carroll, but also that is connected to the Duke. That is the surfing with Aloha. And it's something that I think is defines the surf culture and the people, behind that, right? That
and that was Duke, and it's really beautiful. Yeah, beautiful. He was a beautiful man who had that spirit, and because there was a lot of, it's like Byron away. I mean, you got a crowd. There's too many surfers, and Duke said, like he used to always say. Like share your waves, give your waves because remember there's going to be another one. Another one coming along so far.
Of course. Super important. People consider you, when I read about you, as a legend. Do you consider yourself one?
Well, I guess it's like being a legend. I mean, it's almost a cliche, like in Australia, they have to say, "Oh, he's a legend," that kind of thing. But it's. I just am. I'm part of the. I'm part of the. How do you say? People ask. I'm furniture, right? I'm still alive. I've been surfing since I was 10 years old. I'm 77. So, of course I'm a legend. And Rusty Miller, easy name to remember. And, and I've surfed all around the world, traveled a bit. So, it's nice. I guess it's a compliment. Like I say, it's a bit of a cliche, but it's also a compliment. And I'm just, I'm part of that history. I wanted to actually, I went to university, and I was going to be a history professor or a history teacher, right? And actually, that's what I've ended up with. I teach surfing, so I know the subject. So that's what I am, a legend teacher.
Nice definition, legend teacher, right? But then, as well, I had the opportunity to speak with Greg Knoll. He told me, Alessandro, for me at that time, surfing Waimea, we were just like a bunch of guys that were just like surfing, all day long, right? And I became a legend because of that. I don't know, but if you say that I'm a legend, I believe you.
He's lovely. He's a really beautiful spokesman for surfing. And also, by the way, speaking of Greg Knoll, he's had this amazing thing called the Greg Knoll reunions, right? Which I've been. I think I went to 5 or 6 of them, and all these surfers around the world. So he did would one in Hawaii, did one in a couple of Hawaii, Costa Rica, and he invited 24 people around to go to all these places, fully paid, right, sponsored. So I was in I think 5 of those legend I guess reunions, and thank you, Greg Knoll, for us and for everyone who was lucky enough to come to his to have him organize all those reunions. So just fantastic.
You went in which reunion?
Two in Costa Rica, one in Bali, one thing in Hawaii, and not sure where the other one is. But yeah, it was great too because it was one in two in Costa Rica. One of those who I think one of our other question came was Phil Edwards. He came, and then and another one, Nikki Dora came, and also Bruce Brown was there, and Tom Morey, and Grubby Clark, and all these sort of older guys being together and talking about not schmaltzy, sentimental stuff, but all seeing each other again and saying, how are you going, or what are you doing, and just to appreciate all the amazing tribe. I keep on using the word tribe. We are a tribe, and those all those original guys are pretty much the tribe. Tribe is expanded population wise, but of course now, there was. I mean, I basically knew pretty much all those guys in the early days. Yep.
And
Greg, great. We had one thing they paid Mickey's way, but there was a condition. He said, Greg said to Mickey Dora, "Oh, the only thing we'll pay everything, right? But remember, you have to show up for the photo." And he didn't. And Greg told, because I knew him through a good friend of his named Grant Roloff. So I sort of knew Mickey personally, and because I'd gone up to LA a bit, anyhow. And he said, and Greg told me, "Listen, go get him. He's room number 27. Go see, go get him. If you can, because he knows. Anyhow, because we were had a good relationship with him. And then I went to him, and I knocked on the door, and he opened the door and had this pillow in his ear and said, "Oh, I got this horrible earache. I can't be able to go." So typical Dora. The only thing they wanted was one photo. So yeah,
okay, that's
funny. And anybody,
very interesting.
It's just funny. And the other incident in the hotel, this big sort of swanky hotel, somebody was we were walking across the in the foyer, and somebody was movie camera was taking pictures of Mickey, and he ran up and he grabbed the camera. And he's gonna take the camera and throw it down. You can't take a picture. You're not supposed to take a picture of me.
Oh, okay. even.
Actually throw the camera, but he threatened the guy, scared the heck out of the guy.
Okay.
It's a big, camera.
Amazing. In your life, you had the possibility to surf all over the world, right? And of course, Australia, USA, they were like where you live and when you're born. But apart of these two countries, is there like a particular wave that was unforgettable for you?
Probably I would say in Hawaii would be well, my several waves. The way where I live, just in North San Diego County in California, 20 miles north of San Diego, is a lovely place called Swami's. So Paramahansa Yogananda had a ashram there, and that's where I lived. That's where I lived, about 3 or 4 blocks away from Swami's. So Swami's was Moonlight was where my board was shaped, and it was sort of a beach break, and then Swami's was like just underneath this self-realization fellowship, and that was one of my. And my other favorite, of course, is I guess it's different. The other favorite, of course, is Sunset Beach. I love Sunset Beach. When I first came to my first trip to Hawaii, I lived with Pat Byrne, and he had a place just a little in a Quonset hut, and that's where I first came. He picked me up at the airport and drove me out to the North Shore, and then I slept on the couch. And in the morning, when the sun came up, there's some palm trees and some waves were breaking. I went down. I was just about a quarter of a mile from Sunset Beach. I could see the waves out there. So yeah, it was one of my favorite places, Sunset Beach. Yep.
It was an amazing thing, like you were talking it very simplicity, but coming having a Patker and coming to pick you up at the airport is not like I mean, it's not a thing of every day if you think about today, right?
Yeah, you're getting a stuttering talk, but I can understand what you. Yeah, it was. I mean, just that he wrote, Pat Kern. I wrote him a letter, and then he wrote me a letter back and said, come here, tell me when you're coming, and I'll pick you up at the airport. But one of the reasons Pat Kern befriended me. I mean, I knew him from La Jolla, but Pat Kern is very recalcitrant. He's a very sort of a quiet, underspoken person. And then the reason he had a good friend named John Elwell. John Elwell was a county lifeguard. He's one of the guys who he's sort of if you ever read about Simmons, you know about John Elwell because he was his friend, and still has all his old boards and stuff like that. So John Elwell was good friends with Pat Kern, and that's how he I think he befriended John and invited me to stay. So it's quite good.
You met a lot of surfers. Is there one surfer that left a particular mark that was very meaningful for you to meet?
Yes, I know that one. Phil Edwards.
Phil Edwards.
Phil Edwards. Yeah, Phil Edwards was what most people thought there in that time. We're talking late 60s, early 50s. Phil Edwards was everybody thought he was the best surfer in the world, but he wasn't in the competition. He was the best surfer in the world by accolade by his peers. His peers thought he was, and interestingly, very fortunately, Phil Edwards lived only 10 miles north where I lived. Like I lived in those. I was born in La Jolla, but I grew up in Encinitas next to Swami, and and Phil Edwards was from Oceanside, and so when he came to surf Swami, he didn't, So let's say I think he's about 6 years older than me, so I'm 7. So I would have been 13 or 14. He was in his early 20s, kind of thing, and he didn't come down to surf Swamis. He appeared. So I always think about that, my age, the age when you're young, 13, 12 and 13, 14, how important it is to the older, the respect and how you think about the older people who are accomplished in that, whatever trade they're being surfer, right? So Phil Edwards was just appeared when he appeared, it was only when the surfing was perfect. So he must have knew the swell direction. Yeah. So he had a lot of influence in me, his style and sort of like Skip Fry and Mike Henson. They idolized Phil too. They would probably say Phil was my because you see, not just was a great surfer. He actually shaped the surfboards, fiberglass that made the fin, put everything, and then went out and rode it. And he had a famous surfboard called Baby, which is in the Bruce Brown movie Surfing Holidays, in which he actually came to Australia. My wife is making a book about the American influence in Byron Bay, and he actually came here in 1961. There's a picture of him traveling up the coast. He's sitting there in the lawn with the lighthouse in the background. Phil Edwards. So he was like he was a milestone influence here just by coming here and surfing. His style was just brilliant. It was beautiful stuff. And I could actually went surfing with him at Swami's, and and then after a while, there wasn't a lot of people. It would be a cold winter day or something like that, and we'd build fires. And I remember being around the fire after we surfed, because of course wetsuits weren't very good and we got pretty cold. So sitting around the fire, and we unfortunately, but what we used to do once I throw a tire in so we got very warm. But they're being around the fire with all these surfers, and actually one of the is Phil Edwards. It was pretty good. And then I also went up and watched him shape in Peter Johnson's house in Oceanside. And if I'd be quiet, I'd sit there. And he always told me, I guess one of the most profound thing he told me, Phil, I remember that sits in my head besides that. And I've seen him recently, and we just did an interview with my wife's book. And yeah, and he always said, surfing is not a sport. It's an art. Surfing is art. And even though in that is early days, and then I started getting competition and doing well, all that competition, all that kind of, I still ingrained into me is like, surfing is an art. And of course, a lot of people loved, there's even people who are artistic people and creative people. They don't surf, but they see surfing, and they can describe it to you that as, oh wow, that's art. It's like somebody dancing, And so there it is. So Phil Edwards is quite big, and it's still alive, of course. And I just had a conversation with him a couple of months ago, and I asked for, I said if he's because he's very recalcitrant and very shy and sort of reclusive in a sense, and yet started talking to me. He sounded really chipper and happy, and I asked about his health issues. We all have health issues. We're over 70s, 80s, something. And I said, oh yeah, well, I'm just here. I'm here, and I'm happy. So I was so happy after all these years that he was still happy on his skin, right?
Nice.
Elderly man. It's like an elderly, honored elderly statesman. No agenda, just being, being a beautiful person who's happy in skin and happy with his wisdom and happy to alive, right?
Amazing.
Phil Edwards.
Amazing. Do you think I will ever join the podcast? I will be like, wow, if Phil Edwards would ever.
I would not sort of volunteer him in any sense. But I probably wouldn't. No, he doesn't do, and which was exceptional for us because Oh yeah, and the reason, I think one of the reasons is another big thing that he gave me that influenced me, right? Is he was a sailor, right?
Yeah,
and he actually, on my point of view, he actually introduced. They had outrigger canoes, right? And they built outrigger canoes, and then and sailing, and then they started making cat. There was a catamarans before. There's a P-cats and stuff like little catamarans, right? And then he actually made a boat called a catamaran. It was about, I think it was about 18, 20 foot catamaran, and very sparse. But and he had a little. So he went on a race from Cinco de Mayo race from Newport Beach, California to Ensenada, Mexico, right? Called the Cinco de Mayo race, right? It's a full day, full night of the day race to into Mexico, to Ensenada, Mexico. Anyhow, so he went on with Hobie Alter, right? And him and Hobie, they were in wetsuits, and they had made a little cheater, little weather vane piece on the decks, and they drove, begin early in the morning, all night, had early in the morning, and of course coastal fog. There's fog in California, and all along the coast of California, in Mexico, there's morning fog, and at the next morning, early in the morning, the fog cleared, and then Hobie and Phil were on the boat. Was called El Gato. So this is basically I thought it's a prototype of the Hobie cat. And so there they were with all the maxi yachts. They were like either 18 foot, but they were this huge 60, 80 foot super yachts that were sailing and of course the monosailor people didn't it wasn't a fit. They couldn't be in the race. They weren't people didn't even recognize Hobie catamarans, right? Anyhow, so that was Hobie and Phil that matched those huge maxi yachts in the Ensenada, So anyhow, Phil was one of those. And anyhow, so one afternoon at Moonlight Beach, I don't know what I was saying. Phil had his El Gato, the little catamaran. He was going, I'm sailing up to Oceanside. It's about 10 miles. He said, do you want to come along? I said, oh yeah. So I actually went on the catamaran, right? And through the surf, because they were surfers. So they made the catamarans with a little bit of rocker in them, right? Because they were surfers, right? And so I went with a sail with Phil from Encinitas up to Oceanside. And it was like so influenced. I still have, I have a Hobie 16. I love it. I love it because of the shape. It's got a rocker. It's got an asymmetrical hull. It's got a raised trampoline. Hobie, and it's a sandwich, a foam sandwich. Hobie is one of the original guys that do a foam sandwich. And so that was like, and Phil, it was so good when he remembered that. I was so stoked he remembered that. That was such a big deal for me. I was 16 or something like that. Yeah. And that was so influential for Phil. So sailing and surfing, it's all in Hobie and all this. They had this beautiful, these guys were like all rounders, as they say in here in cricket, they say all rounders. They can bat, they can pitch, so yeah, there it is.
You make me think about something that I had the opportunity to investigate a bit through the podcast. Is that your generation? Like all of you were watermen before being surfer. Like you're people that really enjoying being in the water, being swimming or sailing. Like for instance, when I interviewed Joey Cabell, he told me, I'm still sailing, I'm swimming, come to Hawaii, we do it together. And, and this kind of generation is very different, like from, for instance, the generation of the 80s or the 90s of surfers, right? And today you have you have pro surfer, but you have very few watermen, right? Maybe like John Florence, like you have those kind of people. Yeah, exactly. And so it's amazing because when you are a true waterman, you are in your essence, right? Water is your.
In Hawaii, yeah. And also I love that. So I love the Hawaiians, like Buffalo and Jose Angel and those guys. They're all Ricky Gregg. All these guys were all around. And John Elwell, the good friend of Pat Kern, the local lifeguard in my home beach when I was a little gremlin, telling me that, I'm going to go to Hawaii. Yeah, you can go to Hawaii, but make sure if you go to Hawaii, you don't throw sand. Don't mess around. You got to be really respectful to blah blah blah. So I had these older guys telling me that kind of stuff. Mike Diffenderfer is a little older than me. He was like that. Joey Cabell is a really good friend of mine. I've sailed with him on his beautiful. He's got a 43-foot catamaran, which is right, beautifully kept, of course. And so I lived on island. I lived in the island of. In 1967 to 1970, I moved to the island of Kauai. Joey invited me to. He was building a restaurant in Honolulu, and he said, "Come and take my help work in my property." And I had a surfing clause, so the service I could go surfing. So so Joey offered a great invitation to go to Kauai, which is relatively secret. So I lived there from 67 to 70 before I came here. So yeah, Joey was. Beautiful, generous, kind person. Yeah, we're very aloha.
That very aloha. Yeah, I'm very blessed also to have the opportunity to talk with him. So today, what are your plans? You said at the beginning that you keep giving some private lessons, right, to few people. Yeah, you're writing a new book. What's your plan?
My wife is writing the book called, and of course I'm assisting. To contact people and everything. So again, that's one of our projects. Another project we do every once a year is my wife and I. We have a annual publication called Rusty's Byron Guide, which is like a little A5 magazine, which is about sort of the spirit and feeling of Byron. So we get different people to write articles and. So that's one of the things. So between doing that and my teaching, I have a couple of young coaches that are assisting, and so pretty busy, and we do several things and enjoy living here in Byron Bay.
Amazing. We're going to finish our interview with a short question and answer session. So please answer the first thing that comes up to your mind. Okay?
Okay.
Let's try. The best surfboard that you ever ridden?
I think the most memorable surfboard that first thing came to my mind when my wife was the velvety pigboard. So it was a balsa wood board, but it was like the first time they made sort of like a teardrop shape. So you could, you had these lung bog boards, and all of a sudden you had these I guess a 9 foot kind of thing, but they had obviously a wider point aft back of the center. So that pig, I just remember. I don't know why. I just remember that surfboard, Velzy pigboard. Yeah.
Amazing. Your favorite shaper?
Let's see. Well, there's a local guy from California, from Santa Barbara, and years ago I shaped. I've ridden a lot of different kind of boards. There's a guy named Michael Cundiff, and he's from Santa Barbara originally. He still lives here. He lives here. He's and he was he shaped. He was a good shaper. He's a really good shaper. And I like. And then also has some very special surfboards made by Dick Van Stralen, who lives just up in Queensland, 50 miles up north. So those are the two shapers that I'm.
Personal question: your favorite song?
Oh, I'm very embarrassed because I've lost the song that I used to play all the time. It was by the Gypsy Kings, and I forgot, but yeah, I loved that song. I can't even remember the song. It's just sort of when I was first asked that question, I couldn't remember that exactly that song, but yeah, I love the gypsy guitar kind of thing. I love jazz. I was on to I love Stan Getz. I would say was one of my favorite. And I saw Dave Brubeck play at our university in San Diego.
Okay.
So there's maybe Take Five. He's one of my. I just listened the other day. Take Five. Yeah, it was great. Beautiful song. Amazing.
Your favorite surf spot?
My favorite surf spot currently, obviously, is Lennox.
Okay.
Lennox is we have three point breaks along here in this area, and Lennox. I love Lennox because it gets special. It gets big. It's real deep outside. Yeah, it's a lovely place. Lennox Head. Yep.
Amazing.
And I don't mind announcing because everyone knows it, so I'm not going to ruin it.
Okay. Hopefully. Okay. We keep it secret. Your favorite surfer?
Probably Dave Rastovich.
Okay. Nice.
He's lovely. Well, Phil Edwards, of course, is the first one. Is my original one, my favorite surfer, of course. I'd say Dave. Yeah. They're the other end.
Yeah, we just balance. We talk a lot about Phil Edwards till now, so we just make a balance. Okay. And the last question is a little bit unusual. We ask everybody on the show, has nothing to do with surf. We want to know your best relationship advice.
Oh yeah, okay. Learning. I have that one. Learning to love, tough love.
Oh. Can you tell me more about this? It's interesting.
Well, you have friends and partners and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And who you love, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes when you're not maybe not think properly, or you do something wrong, or something, not something wrong, but just you have your attitude funny or something, they're not afraid to, a good friend is not afraid to tap you on the shoulder and say, yeah, well, listen, we like you, but I don't like that. I don't like that. That's not a healthy attitude or a good attitude, or proper to think things or something like that. So yeah, tough love. So tough love, but it's something you have to learn about, and not being sort of upset about stuff. But like people who are real friends that actually tell you stuff.
And it goes also in awareness, right? If you are aware of yourself, self-awareness.
Exactly.
definitely.
Yeah, and it could yeah, it's interesting you say that. Safety wise, yeah. So you have to be, you see somebody doing something wrong in the surf, you tell it, you call it, right? You call it. It's it's not always easy to call that. Like if there's not a good attitude, it's a good point. There's a bad attitude out of the water, right? You might just go up and people are yelling or be say be profane or swearing or something. You might say, hey, like, what do like we're having, this is fun. We're surfing. We're surfing. This, be more. Be like the Duke. Yeah.
Be like the Duke.
Definitely. Waves, another one.
Definitely. I totally agree with you. Thank you, Rusty, for being with me on the show today. I've been honored of your presence. I really enjoyed. And I hope to talk to you very soon.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Hi, it's me again. I hope you enjoyed our today's episode. If you want to know more about us, please follow www.thetempleofsurf.com and all our social media. Mahalo!